Define Can't. Part 1. The Academy of Stars, the space station floated in the darkness between two dying suns. It was old. It was massive. And for 300 years, it had trained the finest warriors in the known galaxy. The Galactic Combat Academy accepted students from over 200 different species. Some had claws that could cut through metal. Others had 4 arms or 6 legs. A few could see in complete darkness or move faster than the eye could follow. Every species brought their own natural gifts to the art of combat. Instructor. Vala stood at the front of Training Hall 9. She was a Quant, a species known for their size and strength. Her body was covered in scales that looked like polished black stone. She had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle, and her eyes glowed a soft orange color. When she spoke, her voice was deep enough to make the floor vibrate. "Welcome to the Blade program," she said to the 32 students sitting before her. "You have been selected because your species shows promise in close combat. Over the next 3 years, I will teach you to fight. I will teach you to survive. And most importantly, I will teach you to understand your own limits." The students came from 11 different worlds. There were other Corinth like Vela, their 4 arms perfect for the quad blade fighting style that had made their species famous. There were Tazari, snake-like beings with 4 arms and long tails that could hold weapons. There were massive Grundar with skin like armor, and quick little Vexi who could jump 3 times their own height. And in the third row, sitting quietly between a Tazari and a Grundar, was a human. Her name was Yuna. She was 22 years old, with black hair pulled back in a tight braid and dark eyes that watched everything but revealed nothing. She was not tall. She was not particularly strong. She had only 2 arms, 2 legs, and no natural weapons at all. She was also the first human to be accepted into the Academy's Blade program in 12 years. The student next to her, a young Tazari named Kira, looked down at Yuna with curiosity. The Tazari had 4 arms and a tail that moved constantly behind her, like a snake waiting to strike. "You are the human," Kira said. It was not a question. "Yes," Yuna replied. "I have read about your species. You are known for endurance and adaptability, but you have no natural advantages for blade combat." Kira's voice was not cruel. She was simply stating facts as she understood them. "Why did you choose this program?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because someone told me I could not do it." Before Kira could respond, Instructor Vela called for attention. "Today we will assess your natural abilities and assign you to appropriate training tracks," the instructor announced. Each species has different strengths. A good warrior knows their strengths and fights within them. A dead warrior tries to fight like someone they are not. She began calling students forward one by one. The Corinth students were given 4 practice swords and asked to demonstrate basic coordination. The Tazari showed their ability to use their tails as a 5th weapon. The Grundar proved they could take hits that would kill other species. When Vela called Yuna's name, the room grew quiet. Yuna walked to the front of the hall. She stood before the instructor, her head barely reaching Vela's chest. The size difference was almost comical. One of Vela's arms was thicker than both of Yuna's legs combined. "Human," Vela said, looking down at her. "Your species has been part of the galactic community for only 50 years. In that time, your people have shown impressive adaptability in many fields. But combat is not one of them." Yuna said nothing. She simply waited. "Your neural architecture is limited," Vela continued. "Your brain cannot process independent limb coordination at combat speeds. You lack the physical strength for heavy weapons and the natural armor for close combat. The Academy has studied your species extensively." She picked up a single practice sword from the rack and held it out to Yuna. "You will train single-blade defensive postures. This is the only style suited to human physiology. Do you understand? Yuna took the sword. It was light in her hands, made of some kind of hard plastic that would bruise, but not cut. She tested its weight, moving it slowly through the air. I understand what you are telling me, she said carefully. Vela's orange eyes narrowed slightly. There was something in the human's tone that she did not like, but she could find no direct challenge in the words themselves. Good. Return to your seat. Yuna bowed slightly and walked back to her place in the third row. The other students had already lost interest in her. She was just a human, after all. A curiosity. An experiment that would probably fail before the first year was over. Kira leaned toward her. The instructor is not wrong, the Tazari said quietly. I do not say this to be cruel, but humans have tried the Blade program before. None have graduated. I know, Yuna said. Then why do you stay? Yuna's eyes moved to the weapon rack at the front of the room. Dozens of practice swords hung there, in different sizes and styles. Some were curved. Some were straight. Some were meant to be used alone, and some were clearly designed to be used in pairs. My grandmother taught me something when I was young, Yuna said softly. She said that the universe is full of people who will tell you what you cannot do. They will have reasons. They will have evidence. They will have centuries of tradition behind them. She paused. And sometimes they will be completely wrong. That night, long after the other students had gone to sleep, Yuna returned to Training Hall 9. The lights were dim, set to their nighttime mode, but there was enough illumination to see. She walked to the weapon rack. Her assigned sword was there, marked with her name. A single blade, light and simple, designed for defense. She picked it up. Then she reached out and picked up a second one. The weight felt right in her hands, natural, like coming home after a long journey. She moved to the center of the training floor. The station was quiet around her. In the distance, she could hear the soft hum of the life support systems keeping everyone alive in the cold void of space. Yuna closed her eyes. She breathed in slowly, and then she began to move. The two swords danced through the air, tracing patterns that her grandmother had taught her years ago. Patterns that had been passed down through her family for generations. Patterns that the galaxy had never seen dot in the darkness of the training hall. Yuna smiled. They had told her what she could not do. Now she would show them what she could. Defying Can't, Part 2. The Secret in the Dark 6 weeks passed at the Galactic Combat Academy. Yuna attended every class, followed every instruction, and earned marks that were perfectly adequate. Not excellent, not poor, just good enough to avoid attention. During the day, she practiced her single-blade defensive forms, exactly as Instructor Vela taught them. She blocked when she was supposed to block. She retreated when she was supposed to retreat. She did everything a good human student was expected to do. The other students had stopped paying attention to her. She was background noise. A small, quiet human who would probably wash out before the end of the year. Just like all the others before her. That was exactly what Yuna wanted them to think. Every night. After the station's lights dimmed and the other students went to their sleeping quarters, Yuna made her way back to the training halls. She had discovered that Training Hall 7 was rarely used after midnight. The ventilation systems there were old and noisy, which meant most species avoided it. Their sensitive hearing found the constant humming unpleasant. But Yuna was human. Her hearing was nothing special. The noise did not bother her at all that night after night. She trained alone in that forgotten hall. Two swords in her hands, moving through forms that no one at the academy had ever seen. Forms that her grandmother Yunji had taught her back on Earth. In a small training room behind their family home, Yunji had been 93 years old when she first put a wooden sword in young Yuna's hands Our family has kept this art alive for 400 years, the old woman had said. Long before we knew there were other beings among the stars. Long before anyone told us what humans could or could not do. She had smiled, her face full of wrinkles but her eyes still sharp. When you go out into the galaxy, little one, they will try to define you. They will put you in a box and tell you to stay there. Do not listen. Show them what we are. Yunji had died 3 years later. Yuna had been 10 years old. But she had never stopped practicing. On a quiet night in the 7th week of classes, Yuna's secret was discovered. Taiwu was a maintenance engineer on the station. He was also human, one of about 200 working on the academy in various support roles. His job was to keep the old systems running, which meant he spent a lot of time crawling through access tunnels and fixing things that should have been replaced decades ago. That night, he was working on a ventilation unit in Training Hall 7. He had been inside the access panel for almost an hour, trying to replace a worn-out component, when he heard something strange through the thin metal walls. The sound of blades cutting through air. 2 distinct patterns, moving in a rhythm that seemed impossible. He finished his repair quickly and climbed out of the access panel. What he saw made him freeze. A young woman was moving across the training floor like water flowing over stone. She had 2 swords in her hands, and they moved so fast that they blurred in the dim light. She spun and struck and blocked and attacked. And somehow both weapons worked together in perfect harmony. Taiwu had grown up on Earth. He had heard stories about the old martial arts, the ones that had existed before humanity reached the stars. But he had never seen anything like this. "You are going to get expelled," he said. The woman stopped. She turned to face him, breathing hard but controlled. Her eyes were calm, showing no surprise at being discovered. "Only if someone reports me," she said. Taiwu stepped away from the wall, moving closer. He could see her clearly now. She was young, probably early 20s, with the look of someone who had been training for a very long time. "I am Taiwu," he said. "I work in maintenance. I am Yuna. I am a student." "I can see that." He looked at the swords in her hands. "But humans cannot double-wield. It is in every textbook. Our brains are not built for independent limb coordination at combat speeds. That is what the scientists say." "I have read the textbooks," Yuna said. She did not lower her weapons. "They are wrong. The textbooks are written by experts who have studied hundreds of species." "And how long did they study humans?" Taiwu paused. He had never thought about that question before. 50 years, Yuna continued. "Humanity has been part of the galactic community for 50 years. They measured our limits before we had even left our first solar system. They decided what we could and could not do before we had a chance to show them otherwise." She finally lowered her swords, letting them hang at her sides. "On Earth, we had warriors who could fight with 2 swords thousands of years ago. Some of our oldest martial arts are built around it. My family has been practicing these forms for generations." She looked at him steadily. "The galaxy decided it was impossible because their scientists never asked the right questions. They assumed that because other similar species could not do it, we could not either." Taiwu was quiet for a long moment. He thought about all the times he had been told what humans could not do. Too slow, too weak, too limited. He had accepted those things as facts. Everyone did. But what if they were not facts at all? What if they were just assumptions that no one had ever challenged? Why hide it? He finally asked. Why not show them what you can do? Yuna smiled. It was a small smile, but there was something fierce in it. Because I want to see their faces when they realize everything they believed about humans was wrong. I want them to understand that they never really knew us at all. She lifted one of her swords, examining the blade in the dim light. And because my grandmother told me that surprise is the greatest weapon of all. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. She was. She died when I was young, but she taught me everything important. Yuna looked at him. So, are you going to report me? Taiwu thought about it. The rules were clear. Students were not supposed to train in unapproved combat forms. If he reported her, she would be expelled. She would have to leave the academy in shame. But if he did not report her, if he kept her secret, then maybe something extraordinary would happen. Maybe a human would finally show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. I work the night shift 3 times a week, he said slowly. I could make sure no one else comes to this hall during those times. Yuna studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. Double quotes. Thank you, Taiwu. Do not thank me yet. I just hope you know what you are doing. She lifted both swords again, settling into a stance that looked like she was ready to fight the entire universe. I have been preparing for this my entire life, she said. I know exactly what I am doing. And in the darkness of that forgotten training hall, she began to move again. 2 blades dancing through the air, fast and beautiful and impossible. Taiwu watched until his shift ended, and when he finally left, he carried a secret that would change everything. Defying Cant, Part 3. The Challenge. The Semester Evaluation Tournament was the oldest tradition at the Galactic Combat Academy. For 300 years, students had tested their skills against each other in these competitions. Winners earned respect and recognition. Losers learned hard lessons about their own weaknesses. The tournament was held in the Grand Arena, the largest space on the station. It could hold 5,000 spectators, and for the semester evaluation, every seat was filled. Students, instructors, and staff from every department came to watch the future warriors of the galaxy prove themselves. Yuna had entered the tournament quietly, without drawing attention. She was placed in the single-blade division, the category for species with limited combat options. Her opponents in the early rounds had been other, lesser species. A thin Vexi who was fast but fragile. A young Pelin whose species was known more for diplomacy than fighting. She had beaten them all. Not easily, but not with difficulty either. She fought exactly the way she had been taught. Single blade. Defensive postures. Controlled retreats and careful counterattacks. The judges called her victories surprising and noted her unconventional footwork. They were impressed that a human had made it so far, but no one expected her to go much further. Now she stood at the entrance to the arena, waiting for the semi-final round. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Across the arena, her opponent was warming up. Kira, the Tasari who sat next to her in class, had also advanced to the semifinals. But Kira was not in the single-blade division. She was in the multi-weapon division, where her species had dominated for decades. Somehow, through a twist of the tournament bracket, they had been matched against each other. This is an unusual pairing. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. Candidate Kira of the Tazari, 5-weapon style, versus candidate Yuna of Earth, single-blade defensive style. The skill difference appears significant, but the tournament rules allow for cross-division matches in the semi-final rounds. In the stands, Taiwu sat with the other maintenance staff. His hands were clenched tight in his lap. He knew what Yuna was planning. She had told him the night before, in the quiet darkness of Training Hall 7. Tomorrow I will show them, she had said. Tomorrow everything changes. Are you sure? He had asked. If you fail, you will be expelled. Everything you have worked for will be gone. She had smiled at him. Have you? That same fierce smile he had come to know so well. I will not fail. Now, watching her walk onto the arena floor, Taiwu could only hope she was right. Kira slithered to the center of the arena to meet her. The Tasari was beautiful in an alien way, her scales shimmering green and gold under the bright lights. She carried 5 weapons, one in each of her 4 hands, and a curved blade attached to her powerful tail. "You have done well to come this far, Yuna," Kira said. There was genuine respect in her voice. Over the past weeks, they had developed something close to friendship. "But you know you cannot defeat 5 blades with one." "Perhaps," Yuna said. She turned and walked to the weapons rack at the edge of the arena. Her assigned sword was there, marked with her name. A single blade, light and simple. She picked it up. Then she reached out and picked up a second one. The arena went silent. 5,000 people stopped breathing at the same moment. In the instructor section, Vela rose from her seat. Her forearms were tense, her orange eyes blazing with disbelief. "Candidate Yuna." Her voice cut through the silence like a knife. "That configuration is not part of your approved combat profile. Replace the weapon immediately." Yuna did not replace the weapon. Instead, she turned to face her instructor. She held both swords at her sides, their tips almost touching the floor. "Instructor Vela," she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried across the entire arena. "You told me on my first day that humans cannot double-wield. You said our neural architecture is limited. You said our brains cannot process independent limb coordination at combat speeds." "That is correct," Vila said. "It is scientific fact. No." Yuna lifted both swords into a ready position. "It is an assumption based on incomplete data. Your scientists studied humans for 50 years. In that time, they never once asked us what we could do. They only measured what they thought we could not." She looked around the arena, at the thousands of faces staring at her. Corinth and Tazari and Grunder and Vexi, dozens of species, all watching a single human challenge everything they believed. "On my world, before we knew the stars held other life, we had warriors who could fight with 2 swords. This art has existed for thousands of years. My grandmother taught me. Her grandmother taught her. Generation after generation, we have kept this skill alive." She turned back to Vila. "You told me to understand my limits. But you never actually knew what my limits were. You only knew what you assumed them to be." The arena was still silent. Vela's expression was unreadable. Finally, the instructor spoke. "If you insist on this foolishness, you will be permitted to try. But when you fail, you will be removed from the academy for violating combat protocols. And if I succeed..." Vela was quiet for a long moment. Then she slowly sat back down. "If you succeed," she said, "then perhaps we will need to reconsider what we think we know about humans." Yuna turned to face Kira. The Tazari was watching her with wide eyes, her tail swaying slowly behind her. "I do not wish to hurt you," Kira said. "We are friends." "Then fight me with everything you have," Yuna replied. "That is what friends do. They bring out the best in each other." Kira studied her for a moment. Then a smile crossed her alien face. "Very well, human. Show me what your grandmother taught you." The signal sounded. The match began, and Yuna moved. She was not fast like the Vexi. She was not strong like the Grundar. She did not have 4 arms like the Tazari or scales like the Corinth. But she had something none of them had ever seen. 2 blades that moved as one, weaving a pattern of steel that seemed to exist outside of time itself. She did not block Kira's attacks. She redirected them. She did not retreat from the Tazari's 5 weapons. She flowed around them like water around stones dotting the stands. Taiwu watched with tears in his eyes. He did not even try to hide them. "Impossible?" someone whispered beside him. A Corinth engineer, his 4 hands gripping the seat in front of him. "This is impossible." "No," Taiwu said softly. "It is just something you never expected." The match continued, and in the center of the arena, a human woman danced between 5 blades. her two swords singing a song that the galaxy had never heard before. Defying Cant, Part 4, Rewriting the Impossible. The match between Yuna and Kira lasted 12 minutes. In the history of the Galactic Combat Academy, it would be studied and discussed for decades to come. Kira was a magnificent fighter. Her species had evolved for combat over millions of years. Her four arms moved independently, each one controlling a weapon with perfect precision. Her tail struck like a snake, adding a fifth angle of attack that most opponents could not track. She was fast, powerful, and experienced, and she could not touch Yuna. The human moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Her two swords were not just weapons. They were extensions of her body, of her will, of generations of knowledge passed down through her family. Every movement flowed into the next without pause. Every strike was followed by a block, every block by a counter. But what truly shocked the crowd was not Yuna's defense. It was her attack. She did not fight like someone with fewer weapons than her opponent. She fought like someone who had turned two blades into something more powerful than five. Where Kira's attacks came from multiple directions, they also created openings. 5 weapons meant 5 arms to control, 5 angles to manage. Kira had spent years learning to coordinate all of them. Yuna had spent years learning to exploit exactly those kinds of fighters. Her grandmother, Yunji, had taught her the philosophy behind the two-sword style. When you face an opponent with many weapons, they think they have the advantage. More blades, more attacks, more power. But more also means more weight, more decisions, more chances for error. The old woman had smiled her knowing smile. Two swords used correctly can create a cage that no amount of extra weapons can escape. In the 3rd minute of the match, Yuna demonstrated what her grandmother meant. Kira launched a coordinated attack. All 4 of her arm weapons struck at once while her tail swept low to catch Yuna's legs. It was a perfect technique, practiced thousands of times. No single-blade fighter could defend against it. But Yuna did not defend. She attacked. Her right sword swept up in an arc that deflected 2 of Kira's blades into each other. Her left sword came down at the same moment, catching another blade and redirecting it into the path of the 4th. The tail strike met empty air as Yuna stepped to the side, already moving into her counter. For one perfect moment, all 5 of Kira's weapons were tangled together, pushed there by 2 blades that had moved faster than thought. Yuna could have ended the match right then. Kira was completely open, but instead, she stepped back and waited for the Tessari to recover. "You are holding back," Kira said, breathing hard. Her eyes were wide with something between shock and respect. "I am not here to hurt you," Yuna replied. "I am here to show them." She looked toward the Instructor section, where Vila sat watching with an unreadable expression. "I am here to show all of them." The match continued. In the stands, the crowd had gone from silent disbelief to active discussion. Species that had never paid attention to humans were leaning forward in their seats, trying to understand what they were seeing. Taiwu could hear fragments of conversation around him. "Our neural pathways cannot process this," Corinth was saying. "The human brain is not designed for—" "Obviously it is," another voice interrupted. "We are watching it happen. But the research clearly states, then the research was wrong." Taiwu smiled. This was exactly what Yuna had wanted. Not just to win, but to make them question everything they thought they knew. To plant a seed of doubt that would grow into something larger. On the arena floor, Yuna was increasing her pace. The forms she used were becoming more complex, more beautiful. She moved through techniques that her grandmother had taught her, each one flowing into the next like verses of a poem. The crescent moon, the river's edge, the falling star. And finally, the technique that Yunji had created herself, combining centuries of tradition into something new. something that had never existed until one old woman on a small blue planet decided that the old ways could be improved. Yuna called it the grandmother's answer. She began with a feint to the left that drew 3 of Kira's weapons in that direction. Her right sword came up in a rising strike that forced Kira's tail to block high. Then both swords moved at once, crossing in front of her body and sweeping outward in a pattern that created a perfect cage of steel dot, high and low. Left and right, forward and back. All angles covered in a single moment. With no escape possible, Kira found herself with a blade at her throat and another at her heart. She could not move forward or backward. She could not strike or block. Her 5 weapons were useless against 2 that had found the perfect position. The arena was completely silent. Then Kira laughed. It was a hissing, genuine sound of pure delight. "I yield," she said, "and I am honored to have faced you." Yuna lowered her swords and bowed deeply. "The honor was mine. You are a worthy opponent and a true friend." The crowd erupted. 5,000 voices shouting and cheering and arguing all at once. Some were celebrating. Others were demanding explanations. A few were simply sitting in stunned silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. Yuna ignored all of it. She walked to the edge of the arena and stopped directly in front of the instructor's section. Vala was standing now, her 4 arms hanging at her sides, her orange eyes fixed on the human before her. "Instructor Vala," Yuna said. Her voice was calm, but it carried across the arena despite the noise. "May I speak?" Vala nodded slowly. Yuna turned to face the entire crowd. The noise died down as everyone strained to hear what she would say. "My grandmother's name was Yunji," Yuna began. "She was born on Earth 96 years ago, long before humanity knew that other species existed among the stars. She learned the 2-sword style from her grandmother, who learned from hers. This knowledge has been passed down in my family for 400 years. She lifted both swords, holding them out so everyone could see. Your scientists studied humans for 50 years. They measured our reaction times, our neural pathways, our physical capabilities. They compared us to other bipedal species and concluded that we could not do certain things. They wrote textbooks and established facts and created rules based on those conclusions." She paused, looking around at the thousands of faces watching her. "But they never asked us. They never came to Earth and said, 'Show us what you can do.' They only measured what they expected to find. And when the measurements matched their expectations, they declared the matter settled." She lowered the swords. "Every species has their gifts. The Corinth have their 4 arms. The Tazari have their flexibility and their tails. The Grundar have their strength. The Vexi have their speed. These are real advantages. I will not pretend otherwise." She met Vala's gaze directly. "But humanity's gift is different. Our gift is that we refuse to accept limits. You tell us something is impossible, and we spend generations proving you wrong. Not out of spite or pride, but because we genuinely do not understand why we should stop trying. We look at the word cannot, and we ask a simple question." She raised her voice so that everyone in the arena could hear. "We ask, define cannot. Show us exactly where the line is. Prove to us that it cannot be crossed. And when you fail to prove it, we cross it anyway." The arena was silent once more. Yuna stood alone on the floor, a small human woman who had just done the impossible. In the instructor's section, Vala was very still. Then, slowly, the current instructor began to move her 4 hands together. The sound of her applause echoed through the silent arena. One by one, the others joined her. 5,000 people, representing dozens of species, applauding a human who had shown them that they did not know everything after all. Define Can't, Part 5. Legacy 3 years had passed since the tournament that changed everything. The Galactic Combat Academy looked different now. Not in its physical structure, which was still the same old station floating between two dying suns. The difference was in its spirit, in its understanding of what was possible. There was a new course in the curriculum. It was called Dual-Blade Combat for bipedal species, and it was the first new combat style added to the academy in over 50 years. The waiting list to enroll was longer than any other course in the Blade program. The instructor was a young human woman named Yuna. She was 25 years old now, and she held the title of Senior Combat Master. It was the youngest anyone had ever received that title in the Academy's 300-year history. She was also the first human. On the first day of the new semester, she stood before her class of 30 students. They came from 12 different species, all of them bipedal. All of them told at some point in their lives that they were limited by their biology. Yuna looked at them and saw herself. Years ago, sitting quietly in Vela's class and being told what she could not do. "Welcome," she said. Her voice was warm but steady. "I am Combat Master Yuna. Some of you know my story. Some of you do not. It does not matter. What matters is why you are here." She walked slowly in front of the class, meeting each student's eyes. You are here because someone told you that you could not do something. Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe it was a scientist. Maybe it was your own family. They had reasons for what they said. They had evidence and research and tradition behind them. She picked up 2 training swords from the rack beside her. And maybe they were wrong. In the back of the training hall, Taiwu stood watching. He was no longer just a maintenance engineer. After Yuna's victory in the tournament, he had been inspired to pursue his own impossible dream. He had applied to the Academy's Engineering Advanced program and been accepted. Now, he was working on developing new training equipment specifically designed for species that had been told they were not suited for combat. He was also Yuna's husband. They had married the previous year in a small ceremony attended by friends from both Earth and across the galaxy. Kira had been there, along with several other students who had become close to them over the years. Even Instructor Vela had attended, though she had complained about the human tradition of throwing rice. Today, Taiwu was not alone. In his arms, he held their daughter Jiwoo. She was 4 years old, with her mother's dark eyes and her father's curious nature. She watched the class with intense concentration, as if trying to memorize everything she saw. The galaxy is full of species with natural advantages, Yuna was telling her students. The Corinth have 4 arms. The Dazari have their tails. The Grundar can survive injuries that would kill most of us. These advantages are real. I will never tell you that they do not matter. She began to move through a basic form, her 2 swords weaving patterns in the air. But what I will tell you is this. Limits are usually just theories that have not been challenged yet. Someone somewhere looked at the data and made a reasonable conclusion. But reasonable is not the same as true. Logical is not the same as certain. She stopped and faced the class again. Your assignment for this semester is not to master dual wielding. That takes years. Your assignment is something simpler and much harder. She set down the swords. I want you to find one thing in your life that you have been told you cannot do. It does not have to be combat. It does not have to be important to anyone else. It just has to be something that matters to you. Something that you were told was impossible because of your species, your background, your body, or any other reason. She smiled. And there was something in that smile that made every student sit up straighter. And then I want you to do it anyway. In the back of the hall, little Jiwoo tugged at her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered loudly, the way children do when they think they are being quiet. "Why does Mommy have 2 swords?" Taiwu smiled and adjusted his daughter in his arms so she could see better. Because a long time ago, people told her she could only have one. They said humans were not able to use two swords at the same time. They said our brains did not work that way. But that is silly, Jiwoo said. Mommy uses two swords all the time. Yes, she does. Because when people told her she could not do it, she did not believe them. She asked them to explain exactly why it was impossible. And when they could not explain it properly, she went ahead and proved them wrong. Jiwoo was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then her eyes lit up. Can I learn to use two swords too? When you are older, if you want to. I want to now. Taiwoo laughed softly. You sound exactly like your mother. At the front of the class, Yuna had noticed them. She gave Taiwoo a small smile, then returned her attention to her students. The universe is vast, she said. It is full of impossible things that are just waiting for someone stubborn enough to try. Every limit you have ever been told about is just a line that someone drew in the sand. Lines can be redrawn. Limits can be moved. Impossible can become possible if you are willing to ask the right question. She picked up the swords again and held them out, one in each hand. So let me ask you the same question I asked my instructor 3 years ago, when she told me that humans could not double-wield. When she said that our neural architecture was limited and our brains could not process independent limb coordination at combat speeds. Her eyes swept across the room, meeting each student's gaze. Define cannot. Show me the line. Prove to me that it exists, she smiled. And when you cannot prove it, help me erase it. After the class ended, Yuna walked over to join her family. Jiwoo immediately reached out for her mother, and Yuna took her from Taiwoo's arms with practiced ease. Good first class, Taiwoo said. It was adequate, Yuna replied. But she was smiling. Mommy, Jiwoo said, grabbing at one of the training swords Yuna still carried. Teach me. You are too young. Grandmother Yoonji taught you when you were little. Yuna's smile softened. She looked at her daughter, at those dark eyes so full of determination and curiosity. She did, Yuna admitted. She said I was too young too. And then she taught me anyway, because she saw something in me that would not wait. She looked at Taiwoo. He nodded slowly. After dinner, Yuna told her daughter, we will start with one sword first. When you are bigger, you can learn too. Jiwoo threw her arms around her mother's neck. Thank you, Mommy. Yuna held her daughter close and looked out the window of the training hall at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, on 100 different worlds, species were being told what they could not do. Children were being placed in boxes and given limits and taught to accept them. But here, on this old station floating between dying suns, something had changed. A small crack had appeared in the wall of assumptions that the galaxy had built over centuries. And through that crack, light was beginning to shine. Define, cannot dot, it was more than a question. It was a challenge, a philosophy, a promise to every being who had ever been told that they were not. Yuna kissed her daughter's forehead and made a silent promise to her grandmother's memory. The lesson would continue. The tradition would survive. And one day, the galaxy would understand what humanity had known all along. The only true limit is the one you accept.